The sun burned hot above the endless desert. Waves of heat rolled across the black dunes that stretched farther than any eye could see. Most travelers avoided this place, for it was known as cursed land. The sand itself was not golden like the rest of Egypt's desert, but darker, almost like ash. Local people told stories that no plant grew there, no water stayed, and no man returned if he wandered too far. Yet Daniel and his small team of explorers pressed on. Daniel was not a soldier or a rich noble. He was a historian, someone who had spent his life reading books about forgotten kings and lost kingdoms. But books no longer gave him answers. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. Alongside him walked three others. There was Maya, a skilled linguist who could read old symbols better than anyone he knew. Samir, a desert guide born in a nearby village, who knew how to survive the heat and sandstorms. And Louis, an engineer who always carried strange tools and believed machines could solve any puzzle. For weeks they had followed faint maps and old whispers, searching for a tomb that should not exist. Ancient texts spoke of a pharaoh who was never buried in the Valley of Kings, a ruler erased from memory. The priests wrote his name only once, and then struck it from the stone, as if fearing the power it carried. The words said he was laid to rest in a tomb of black sand. On the 10th day of travel, Samir stopped and raised his hand. His eyes scanned the horizon. The wind had shifted, pulling away layers of dark sand. A flat surface glimmered below, smooth like polished stone. "Here," Samir said, voice low but steady. "The desert hides something." The group hurried forward, digging with their hands and tools. As they cleared away the sand, more of the strange surface appeared. It was not ordinary rock. It was black stone carved with perfect lines, harder than anything they had seen before. Symbols ran across it, faintly glowing as the sun sank lower in the sky. Maya knelt down, brushing the surface with care. Her fingers traced the glowing marks. "This is not normal writing," she whispered. "It is older than hieroglyphs. And it feels alive, as if it was waiting for us." Louis tapped the stone with a small hammer, but the sound echoed strangely, like striking hollow metal rather than solid rock. "This is not just a floor," he said. "It is a door." Daniel's heart pounded. For years he had dreamed of this moment. "Then we open it," he said firmly. They worked together, brushing away more sand until the outline of a massive stone slab revealed itself. At its center stood a sun-shaped symbol, with rays spreading outward. Unlike the rest, this mark pulsed with dim light. Louis studied it with interest, pressing a device against the surface. The machine hummed and clicked. "The energy inside is strange," he said. "It feels more advanced than anything I know." Maya shook her head. "Energy? This is an ancient tomb. There cannot be energy here." But as the sky turned red with sunset, the symbol glowed brighter. The black sand around them shifted, as though stirred by some hidden breath. Daniel felt the ground tremble under his feet. The slab began to move. With a deep groan, it slid aside, revealing a stairway descending into the darkness below. A cold wind rushed upward, carrying the scent of dust and something older than time. Samir took a cautious step back. "This place is not meant to be opened," he warned. "The desert kept it buried for a reason." Daniel looked down the stairway. Shadows moved inside, yet no flame or torch was there. It was as if the walls themselves glowed faintly, guiding the way. "We came here to find the truth," he said. "We cannot turn away now." They lit their lanterns and began the descent. The stairs were narrow and steep, cut from the same black stone. Strange carvings line the walls, figures of men kneeling before a tall shape made of swirling sand. The images showed the tall figure rising above armies, swallowing them whole, and finally being locked within a chamber. Maya read the markings aloud, her voice shaking. He is the Pharaoh who must not rise. His throne is the desert. His army is the sand. His name is silence. The team exchanged nervous looks. Lewis muttered, strange warning for a tomb. Almost like it was built to keep something in, not honor someone. At last they reached the bottom. A vast chamber opened before them, lit by a soft blue glow coming from lines carved in the floor. In the center stood a massive stone coffin, smooth and unmarked. All around it, the sand itself seemed to press against invisible walls, held back by the glow. Daniel stared in awe. This is it? The Pharaoh's tomb of black sand. But as he spoke the words, the blue lines on the floor flickered. The sand at the edges quivered, as though eager to break free. The air grew colder, and the silence deepened until they could hear only the sound of their own hearts. They had found what no one believed existed. Yet in that moment, Daniel felt not triumph but dread. The tomb had not been waiting to be discovered. It had been waiting to awaken. The chamber was colder than the desert night above. Every breath of Daniel and his team came out as mist, drifting into the still air. The blue glow on the floor flickered again, then steadied, as if warning them. The great coffin at the center stood untouched, yet its presence pressed heavy on every heart. Daniel walked slowly around it, lantern raised high. This is no ordinary tomb, he said. His voice echoed against the black stone walls. Maya kept her eyes on the glowing floor. She traced the lines with her fingers, noticing that they formed a pattern. These lines are not decoration, she whispered. They are seals, locking something inside. Lewis crouched beside the stone, running a device along the surface. The machine buzzed and gave faint clicks. He frowned. There is energy here. Old, but strong. It is not natural. It feels like a machine is buried in this stone. Samir shook his head, gripping his staff tightly. Machines or not, this is cursed. You should all leave it untouched. His eyes never left the edges of the room, where the sand pressed against invisible walls. The grains shifted, restless, as if they had a mind of their own. Daniel stopped, staring at the coffin. For centuries people believed this was only legend. Now it lies before us. If this pharaoh was buried here, erased from history, we must understand why. Maya's lantern light fell upon a carving on the wall behind the coffin. It showed men holding staffs, forming a circle around a tall shape of swirling sand. Strange symbols surrounded the image, words in a tongue older than Egyptian. She translated with care. It says, bind him with silence. Lock him under stone. Do not speak his name. If the seal breaks, the desert will rise. A chill spread through the chamber. Lewis gave a nervous laugh. Superstitions. Every tomb has warnings. They just wanted to frighten grave robbers. But even as he spoke, the ground trembled faintly beneath their feet. Dust fell from the ceiling. The blue light on the floor pulsed, dimmed, then flared again. The sand at the edges pressed harder against the unseen barrier, rising and falling like waves of a black ocean. Daniel's voice was quiet. That is no superstition. Samir pointed at the floor. The seal is weakening. We should leave now before the desert swallows us. Yet curiosity pulled Daniel closer to the coffin. His hand hovered above the cold surface. He did not touch it, but the air above it vibrated, as though energy lived in the stone. His lantern flickered. Suddenly a deep hum filled the chamber. The floor lines glowed brighter, racing like fire through channels in the stone. A sound like rushing wind roared in their ears, but no air moved. The invisible walls trembled. Black sand poured in thin streams through cracks that had not been there before. Maya gasped. It is waking. The sand spread across the floor, slithering like snakes. It gathered in small piles that rose and fell as if breathing. The coffin vibrated, dust shaking loose from its edges. The blue light fought against the sand, but the balance was shifting. Louis stumbled back, panic in his eyes. It is responding to us. Our voices, our light, our movement. We triggered something. Daniel raised his lantern high, scanning the chamber. His mind raced. There must be a way to stop it. Look for symbols, for switches, anything. Maya ran her hands over the carvings, desperate for answers. The words say silence keeps him bound. But how can silence fight this? The sand surged upward, forming sharp shapes like claws. Samir swung his staff at one, scattering grains across the floor, but they crawled back together, pulling into the tide again. Daniel shouted, "We must leave. Now." They ran toward the stairway, the lanterns casting wild shadows. Behind them, the coffin gave a loud crack, as if splitting. The sound followed them up the stairs, deep and heavy, echoing like thunder. The sand rose higher, chasing their heels, filling the chamber below. When they burst into the night air, the desert greeted them with a furious wind. The black dunes shifted as though alive, rolling like waves under the moonlight. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping. Maya clutched the edge of the stairway, her eyes wide with fear. Louis's hands shook so badly he dropped his device, which shattered on the stone. Samir stood tall, scanning the horizon with grim eyes. In the distance, a pillar of light shot from the desert sky, straight into the heavens. The ground shook, and the dunes roared as if the whole desert had found a voice. The stars themselves seemed to tremble under the beam of light. Daniel's voice broke the silence. "We have awakened something." That was not a tomb alone. It was a beacon. Above them, far beyond the reach of the human eye, something stirred in the cold of space. Somewhere, across the stars, the signal had been heard. And it was coming. The desert was restless. 4 days after the light shot into the sky, the black dunes shifted and moaned like a living sea. Villagers from miles away spoke of strange winds that whispered in unknown tongues. Many packed their belongings and fled, leaving the land empty. Daniel and his team stayed near the tomb, building a small camp on the high ridge of stone. They watched the dunes move in unnatural patterns, though the tomb itself stayed quiet, sealed once again under sand. The memory of that cracking coffin haunted them, yet none dared return below. At night Daniel sat awake, staring at the stars. He thought of the beam of light. It had not been a random burst. It had been a message, clear and strong. A warning or a call, he could not say. All he knew was that it had gone far into the darkness above. On the 4th night the answer came. The stars shifted, not by movement of clouds, but by the arrival of shadows. 3 enormous shapes slid into the edge of the sky, blocking starlight as they descended. They were not meteors. They were ships. Their surfaces glimmered like crystal, bending moonlight into strange colors. The ground shook as the ships lowered into the desert, silent but heavy. Black sand rippled outward like water from a stone. Daniel and his team stood on the ridge, lanterns in hand, their hearts racing. A door opened on the largest ship. Light spilled out, bright and cold, and figures stepped into the desert night. They were taller than any human, covered in shining armor that looked as though it had grown rather than been built. The armor caught the moonlight and scattered it in sharp patterns, making their forms seem more statue than flesh. The first of them raised a hand, palm open. His voice echoed not only in the air but inside their minds. "Guardians of this world, do not fear. We have come for the tomb." Daniel swallowed hard, forcing courage into his voice. "Who are you?" The tall figure's head turned, crystalline plates shifting like glass. "We are the Viewership. Long ago, we fought against the one you call Pharaoh. He was not a king of men. He was a warlord made of living sand, a weapon that consumed entire worlds. We trapped him here when no other prison could hold him." Maya's eyes widened. "Then the tomb is not his resting place. It is his cage." The Viewership leader nodded. "Yes. We buried him deep, under seals and silence, guarded by this planet's people. For a time, he slept. But your kind forgot the duty, and your voices have broken the silence. Now the sands stir again." Lewis stepped forward, his voice shaking but curious. "If you locked him here, why return only now?" The Viewership's tone grew heavier. "Because the signal was lit. His prison has called. Across the stars, we heard. And where we hear, so too may others. We came not for conquest, but to stop the rising." Samir gripped his staff tighter, distrust clear on his face. "And what if you fail? What will happen to our land then?" The leader of the Viewership turned, pointing toward the dunes that shifted even in still air. "If he awakens fully, there will be no land, no water, no people. Only black sand spreading until it covers the world." The words settled like a stone in every heart. The night grew quieter, as though the desert itself listened. Daniel looked at the alien beings, his mind torn. They carried wisdom and strength beyond human reach. Yet he could not forget the warning carved in stone: silence, binding, guardianship. The carvings had shown men, not aliens, standing against the Pharaoh. Why would ancient humans be chosen to guard such a prison if they had no power to face it? He asked carefully, "Why leave the Pharaoh here on Earth, if he is so dangerous?" The Viewership's light-filled eyes dimmed, as if recalling a burden. "Because Earth was hidden. A quiet world, far from great paths of war. It was a place forgotten by many. We hoped it would stay untouched." Maya whispered, "But it did not stay forgotten. We found it." The Viewership leader stepped closer, towering above Daniel yet speaking with calm weight. "This is not the first time the tomb has stirred. Long ago, when humans were young, the sand almost broke free. But your ancestors stood with us. They carried strength unlike others. That is why the duty was given to you. And that is why we return now, to see if your people are still strong." Lewis frowned. "And if we are not?" The leader's voice grew sharper. "Then we will do what must be done. We will burn the desert to glass, sealing him forever, even if it means the loss of this land." Samir stepped forward, anger in his voice. "You would destroy our home." The alien's gaze did not waver. "If it saves a galaxy, yes." Daniel raised a hand, stopping Samir from speaking further. He felt the weight of choice pressing down. The Viewership claimed to be protectors, yet they were also executioners. If the Pharaoh rose, they would not hesitate to sacrifice Earth. Daniel's heart burned with the thought he dared not yet speak. If Earth was chosen as guardian once, then it was not weakness that bound the Pharaoh. Perhaps humanity held a power the Viori had forgotten. He looked up at the towering figures. If this warlord stirs again, then it is not only your fight. Earth will not be silent this time. We will stand as guardians once more. The Viori leader studied him, silent for a long moment. Then the alien inclined his head slightly, like a bow. We will see if your words are truth. The desert wind howled, carrying grains of black sand into the night sky. The Pharaoh's cage was weakening, and soon, the test of humanity would begin. The desert winds did not rest. For days the black sand swirled in slow spirals around the hidden tomb, as if some giant hand stirred it from beneath. Daniel and his team stayed in their camp, but now they were not alone. The Viori ship stood nearby, tall as mountains, glowing with strange lights at night. Their presence filled the desert with unease. Every evening, Daniel and Maya sat with the Viori leader, who called himself Aryan. His voice echoed inside their minds, and though calm, it carried the weight of centuries. He spoke of battles fought long ago, of worlds devoured by living sand, and of the endless war to keep the Pharaoh bound. The tomb must be sealed again, Aryan said one night as the stars blazed overhead. But the seal weakens because of your kind. You must allow us to take control. We can burn this place into glass, burying him forever. Maya's face was pale in the firelight. If you burn the desert, you destroy everything. Villages, families, rivers. People live here. Aryan's crystalline face shifted, light rippling like water across his armor. One world is a small price compared to all worlds. If he escapes, no star will be safe. Daniel listened in silence, his thoughts heavy. He remembered the carvings deep inside the tomb, the images of men standing in a circle to hold the Pharaoh down. Not the Viori, but humans. Why would the ancients show such things if humanity had no role to play? The next day Daniel gathered his team on the ridge. The wind cut sharp across their faces, carrying the smell of dust and stone. The Viori want to seal the tomb by destroying the desert, Daniel said. But I believe they are wrong. The carvings told a different story. We were meant to guard him, not surrender the task. Samir's eyes burned with fire. I will not watch strangers burn my homeland. If they light fire on this sand, they will find me standing in their path. Louis hesitated, rubbing his temples. I do not trust these aliens either, but think of their weapons. We cannot match them. They would turn the desert to glass in moments. What power do we have to stop them, let alone the Pharaoh? Daniel looked at each of them, steady and calm. Power is not only in weapons. Power is in choice. Our ancestors chose to stand as guardians. If we give up now, we erase their sacrifice. I will not allow Earth to become a bystander in its own fate. Maya nodded slowly. The words carved in stone said silence binds him. Perhaps silence means more than keeping voices low. Perhaps it means strength of will, unity of heart. If humans once helped trap him, then something in us was chosen for that purpose. Their talk was cut short by a sudden tremor. The ground shook, sending waves of sand rolling across the desert. A sound rose from beneath, not like thunder, but like a deep breath drawn through stone. The tomb was shifting again. That night, Aryan met with them once more. The glow from his armor cast long shadows across the camp. The Pharaoh stirs. You must decide quickly. If we wait too long, even our fire may not hold him. Daniel stepped forward, courage firm in his voice. You cannot decide for us. This is our world, and the tomb lies under our sky. We will not allow you to burn it without trying first. Humanity has a part in this, and we will prove it. Arian's eyes dimmed, then brightened again like stars behind crystal. You speak with defiance, yet I sense truth. If you believe humans can hold the Pharaoh, then show us. But know this: if you fail, we will act without mercy. Daniel met his gaze. Then watch us. You will see. The next morning Daniel led his team back into the tomb. The air inside was colder than before, and the blue lines on the floor flickered weakly, as if dying. Sand leaked through cracks in the walls, gathering in small piles that twitched and shifted. Maya studied the carvings again, her hands shaking as she traced the symbols. It speaks of a circle, of voices joined, of strength made whole. It is not about one person. It is about many standing together. Louis knelt near the coffin, his tools clicking softly. There is a mechanism here, hidden under the stone. It was built for human touch, not alien. The design is simple, like it was meant for people without machines. Samir kept watch near the stairway, staff ready, though he knew wood meant little against living sand. If this awakens fully, we will not leave alive. But I would rather fall as a guardian than live watching strangers destroy my land. Daniel placed his hand on the cold stone of the coffin. He felt a faint hum beneath his palm, not machine alone, but something deeper. It responded to him, like a heartbeat waiting for another to join. He called to the others. Place your hands here. Together. Maya placed her hand beside his, then Louis, then Samir. The coffin trembled under their touch, and the blue light spread again, stronger, filling the chamber. The sand that had leaked through the cracks hissed and pulled back, as if held by invisible chains. Daniel's voice was steady. We are the guardians. We will not run. We will not surrender. This is our choice. The chamber shook with new life, and for the first time, the light did not fade. It grew brighter, answering the unity of human hands. Far above, the viewerships watched in silence. Arian's voice carried through the desert winds, quiet but full of wonder. Perhaps the humans have not forgotten after all. The battle to keep the Pharaoh sealed had begun, and Earth had chosen its side. The desert grew darker with each passing night. The stars above seemed faint, as if the sky itself feared what stirred below. The campfires burned weak, their flames bending away from the black dunes. Daniel and his team kept watch near the tomb, while the viewership stood in silence, glowing faintly against the horizon. Everyone knew the moment of awakening was near. At dawn a tremor shook the ridge. It was stronger than before, rolling through the ground like a wave. Daniel rushed to the edge of the tomb, heart pounding. The stone slab that once sealed the stairway split with a deep crack. Sand poured upward, not falling but climbing, twisting like serpents into the air. Maya gasped. The seal is breaking. From the fissures, streams of black sand rose and swirled, forming tall columns. They twisted together, shaping into a figure. Arms, shoulders, a head all carved from endless grains that moved yet held form. A voice rumbled from within, deep and cold, echoing across the desert. I slept in silence, but silence has ended. The desert breathes again, and I rise. The Pharaoh had awakened. His body towered over them, shifting and reshaping with every gust of wind. His face was a mask of sand, empty eyes glowing with pale fire. Each step he took sank deep into the earth, leaving pits that filled again with black grains. The dunes bowed before him, waves of sand rushing outward as if obeying their master. The viewerships lit up, beams of energy striking the Pharaoh. Blinding white fire cut across the desert, exploding against his body. For a moment he staggered, but then he laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. The sand absorbed the energy, glowing brighter as if feeding on the attack. Arian's voice thundered from the sky. Strike harder. Do not allow him to gain strength. But the harder the Fury fought, the stronger the Pharaoh became. Each blast only thickened his form, until his shadow stretched far across the dunes. He raised one massive arm, and with a sweep, sent a storm of sand crashing into the ships. The vessels shuddered, shields sparking, their lights flickering under the assault. Daniel and his team shielded their faces as the storm swept past. Sand cut across their skin like knives, filling their lungs with dust. Samir planted his staff into the ground to keep steady. Their weapons make him stronger. They cannot defeat him this way. Daniel remembered the carvings deep inside the tomb, the circle of humans standing against the Pharaoh. This was never meant to be their battle alone, he shouted above the storm. It is ours too. Maya clutched the old notes she had copied from the wall. Her voice shook but carried hope. The writing said, he feeds on fire and voice, but will fall to silence and unity. Their weapons are fire. Our strength is something else. Lewis stared at the raging figure. But what can we do against that? We are only four. Daniel turned to him, eyes fierce. Not only four. We are the heirs of those who once stood against him. Our hands awakened the seal. That means our hands can bind him again. The Pharaoh's voice rolled across the desert like thunder. You are dust before me. I am the storm, eternal and endless. Bow, and I may spare you. Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart raced. We will not bow. This is our world, and you will not have it. The Pharaoh's eyes blazed brighter, and he raised both arms. The desert erupted, dunes rising into towers of sand, forming an army of shifting figures. Thousands of shapes marched forward, their bodies flowing yet solid, each one born from the endless grains. The Fury fought with renewed fire, beams cutting through rows of sand soldiers, but more rose in their place. The Pharaoh only grew stronger, his laughter shaking the earth. Daniel turned to his team. Back to the chamber. Now. They ran down the cracked stairway as the ground shook beneath them. Inside, the chamber glowed weakly, the blue lines on the floor struggling to hold back the tide of sand. The coffin had split wide open, empty now, its power drifting into the raging storm above. Maya placed her hands on the carvings. It speaks again of a circle, of human will, of joining together. The seal is not lost. It waits for us. Lewis's hands shook, but he set his tools aside. Then we must give it everything. Daniel placed his palm on the stone again. All of you, with me. One by one, Maya, Samir, and Lewis placed their hands beside his. The stone trembled, and the chamber blazed with light. The cracks closed slightly, holding back the creeping sand. The floor hummed, a sound like a heartbeat returning. Above, the Pharaoh roared, his voice carrying anger for the first time. The chains of light reached upward through the desert, wrapping around his massive form. He staggered, pulling against them, but they held fast. Daniel's voice rang clear. You will not take this world. Humanity stands against you. The battle was only beginning, but for the first time, the Pharaoh had been slowed. The desert no longer bowed only to him. It listened also to the will of mankind. The desert trembled as the Pharaoh fought against the glowing chains that bound him. His massive body of black sand twisted and shifted, each movement sending shock waves through the dunes. The light-borne chains that stretched from the chamber below held tight, Yet cracks already spread through their glow as he struggled. Daniel and his team stood with hands pressed against the stone circle in the chamber. Sweat ran down their faces, but none of them pulled away. The stone pulsed with their heartbeat, glowing brighter with every breath. The old symbols carved into the wall lit up one after another, filling the chamber with a calm blue light. Maya's voice shook but carried strength. He is bound, but not for long. We need more than this to hold him. Samir's eyes stayed on the glowing floor. The circle responds to us. If we give it more, maybe it will grow stronger. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we do not stop. Whatever it takes. Above them, the Pharaoh roared, his voice shaking the walls. Chains of dust cannot hold me. I am the storm that ends empires. You will break, and I will remain. The sand army outside the tomb continued to march. Waves of sand soldiers clashed against the Fury lines. The alien ships fired beam after beam, carving holes through the endless dunes, but every fallen soldier rose again from the black sand. Arion shouted commands in his own language, leading the defense, but even his fleet began to weaken. Inside the chamber, Lewis looked at Daniel, his voice filled with doubt. What if we fail? What if this chamber cannot hold him? Daniel shook his head. Then we stand until we cannot stand anymore. That is what it means to fight for our world. The glow beneath their hands surged. The chains outside thickened, stretching higher and brighter, wrapping tighter around the Pharaoh's massive body. He stumbled for the first time, falling to one knee, his roar echoing like thunder across the desert. The Fury paused in wonder. They had never seen him weakened before. Arion's voice rang clear. The humans are doing this. Their bond holds him where our fire cannot. But the Pharaoh was not finished. His glowing eyes blazed brighter, and his massive body began to shift. Instead of breaking the chains, he poured himself into the sand beneath him. His body dissolved into countless grains, spreading wide across the desert floor. The chains pulled tighter, but now they held only pieces of him, while the rest flowed away like a great tide. Maya gasped. He is escaping through the sand. The chains cannot bind what has no shape. Samir's hands shook as he pressed harder into the circle. Then we must change the way we bind him. Daniel closed his eyes, focusing on the carvings he had studied. He remembered the final image on the wall, not a man bound by chains, but a storm sealed within the earth itself. The seal was never meant to hold a body. It was meant to hold the desert itself. We must bind the sands. The chamber trembled as if it had heard his words. The carvings lit brighter, lines racing across the walls and ceiling, spreading outward into the dunes above. Outside, the Fury ships watched in awe as the desert itself began to glow. Every grain of sand shimmered faint blue, vibrating as if alive. The waves of sand soldiers faltered, their bodies crumbling as the ground beneath them hardened. The Pharaoh's voice thundered in anger. You dare turn the desert against me? I am the desert. You are nothing but breath and dust. But the desert no longer listened only to him. The chains of light did not vanish. Instead, they spread downward, sinking into the dunes, wrapping around the endless grains. The glowing web stretched across miles, binding the storm that gave the Pharaoh his strength. Daniel and his team groaned under the weight of the power flowing through them. Their arms trembled, their legs buckled, but they did not let go. Together they held the seal, forcing the storm back into the earth. Above, the black sand that formed the Pharaoh's body began to collapse inward. His towering form shrank, pulled down by the weight of the glowing desert. His roar turned into a furious cry, then into a sound that shook like breaking stone. Your strength is borrowed. Your chains will fail. And when they do, I will rise greater than before. The glow around the dunes flared once more. The pharaoh's form shattered, his body of sand breaking into countless pieces that rained down across the desert. For a moment the world fell silent. The storm had ended. The Fury ships hovered above the quiet dunes, their lights flickering weak but steady. Arion lowered his weapon, staring at the glowing desert below. His voice was low, almost filled with wonder. The humans have done what even our strongest could not. Inside the chamber, Daniel's team collapsed to the floor, breathless and shaking. The glow dimmed, leaving only faint lines of light across the stone. The circle still pulsed, but weaker now, as if the seal held only by a thread. Maya looked at the cracks along the wall. It worked, but not forever. He is bound again, but the seal is weak. If we leave it, he will return. Daniel's voice was hoarse, but steady. Then we will not leave it. We will find a way to make it stronger. Humanity is not finished. Neither is he. Far above, the night sky cleared. The stars shone brighter than they had in many nights, as if the heavens themselves had been waiting for the storm to pass. Yet beneath the sands, the pharaoh's voice still whispered, faint but endless, carried on the desert wind. The battle was not over. It had only been delayed. The desert was quiet after the storm. The night air carried only the soft sound of the wind brushing against the dunes. Yet Daniel knew the silence was not victory. The pharaoh's whispers still stirred below, faint and steady, like a snake sliding through sand. Daniel and his team sat inside the ancient chamber, their bodies weak but their spirits unbroken. Maya leaned against the wall, her hands still trembling from the energy she had given. Samir lay on his back, staring up at the glowing carvings with tired eyes. Louis sat close to the stone circle, his fingers brushing the dim light as if making sure it had not vanished. "It is holding," Louis said in a quiet voice. "But I feel it slipping. The seal cannot last." Daniel closed his eyes. "Then we finish what was started long ago. This place was not made only to bind him. There must be a final step." Above the chamber, the Fury ships circled the dunes. Arion landed with his warriors and entered the broken entrance. His crystalline armor caught the glow of the symbols as he stepped into the chamber. He looked at the humans with something new in his eyes, not doubt, not command, but respect. "You have done what we could not," Arion said. "But you are right. The Pharaoh cannot be held by chains alone. His voice will remain until his storm is sealed completely. My people tried once, but we were not chosen. You were." Daniel stood, even though his legs felt heavy as stone. He looked at the old carvings once more. The final symbol at the edge of the wall showed not a chain and not a storm. It showed a light within a circle, shining like a star. "The tomb was never meant to be a prison," Daniel said slowly. "It was meant to be a grave. Not to bind the sand, but to bury it." The carvings began to glow as if answering his words. The chamber floor shook, and cracks spread across the stone. Beneath, the sand hissed like water, trying to break free. Maya pushed herself to her feet. If the seal must be a grave, then something must close it. Something final. Samir's voice shook. "And what if that means one of us must stay?" The chamber fell silent. No one spoke, yet they all felt the weight of the thought. The seal was not just a weapon. It was a bond. Someone had to tie their life to it, to become the last key. Arion's voice was low. Your kind holds the bond stronger than any we have seen. It will answer only to a human. The choice is yours. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at his friends. They had followed him into the tomb, faced death beside him, and held the chains with him. He could not ask them to carry this alone. It will be me, Daniel said. His voice was firm, though his chest felt heavy. I opened this tomb. I woke the storm. I will be the one to close it. Maya stepped forward, her eyes wide. No. We all carried this fight together. You cannot take it alone. Daniel gave a faint smile. You will carry the story. You will carry the warning. If the world forgets, he will rise again. Someone must remain to make sure that never happens. The chamber pulsed brighter, as if agreeing. The carvings around the circle glowed with deep blue light. The seal was ready. Daniel walked to the center of the stone circle. The air grew heavy, filled with the sound of whispers rising from the sands. The Pharaoh's voice echoed one last time. You think you can bury me? I am eternal. You are only flesh. Daniel placed his hands on the glowing stone. Maybe I am only flesh. But flesh remembers. Flesh fights. And flesh endures longer than storms. The circle blazed with light. The carvings flared so bright the chamber shook like thunder. The dunes above lit up, spreading miles across the desert, turning night into day. The black sand soldiers that still lingered outside crumbled into dust, vanishing like smoke in the wind. The Pharaoh screamed, his voice breaking as the light swallowed him. The desert itself folded inward, sinking into a great hollow, then sealing flat. The dunes turned pale and smooth, as if cleansed of the darkness that had ruled them. Inside the chamber, Maya, Samir, Lewis, and Arian shielded their eyes. When the light faded, Daniel was gone. The stone circle lay sealed, glowing softly, its light steady and calm. Maya dropped to her knees, tears running down her face. He stayed. He gave everything. Arian bowed his head, his crystalline armor dimming in respect. He has done what no warrior of my people ever could. His name will be remembered beyond this world. Samir placed a hand on the glowing stone. Then we will remember him here, too. Humanity will never forget. The chamber grew still. The faint hum of the seal filled the air, not weak this time, but strong and eternal. The Pharaoh's voice was gone. The desert was silent, at peace for the first time in ages. Above, the stars shone clear, and dawn began to rise over the horizon. The Viuri ships lifted into the sky, carrying the story of what they had witnessed. On the desert floor, Maya, Samir, and Lewis stood together. They were tired, broken, but alive. They looked at the pale dunes stretching endless before them. The Pharaoh's tomb was sealed forever, but the legacy of one man remained. Daniel had given himself to guard the sands. And in that sacrifice, humanity had proven once more that it was not weak, not forgotten, not alone. The desert wind carried the last memory of his voice, not in whispers of the Pharaoh, but in strength. Earth had endured. And the galaxy would remember.